Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. I am all well, and here we are recording on a Sunday because of me. Let's just say it's all about me this week, and it's the 20th of October. So if Apple decides to release anything on a Monday, I think they did last week, it won't be in this episode, so we're just going to report on last week. So it's Sunday the 20th of October, and it's episode 143, and it's very wet.
Yeah, we've definitely had some horrendous weather the last couple of days. I was in Angle, which is in Pembrokeshire. Very nice, near Broadhaven, which looks like Mordor in the distance. But some nice little beaches when you're not looking directly at the oil refinery there. It's pretty good. Yeah, not too bad at all. I'm going to dive us straight into follow-up and get over the weather and say, sorry about the sound last week. We went back to Zoom. Zoom was skipping and clipping and chipping again. So that was bad. And then I managed to screw up the video as well because recording in OBS, somehow the delay between the video I was capturing and our audio and then it syncing up with us trying to look at the web browser at the same time was all over the place. So I thought it was better to post nothing than to post the shambles that was our video feed. So unfortunately, we only had the audio. And it wasn't too bad. It was just a bit skippy.
We're just trying new things here, aren't we? Trying to work out our craft.
I think I'm having a tech meltdown is what's actually happening. Is I genuinely don't know how all this stuff works anymore. And every time I try and fix it, I just seem to make things worse. So such is life.
Long-term plan is to simplify the workflow, isn't it? But short-term, like you say, it's causing a meltdown.
It's absolutely causing a meltdown. I genuinely don't know what to do about it at this point. But, there we go. We'll soldier on and hopefully we'll have something for the viewers to look at.
Well, let's see where we get to then. Shall we dive into some follow-up items?
I think it's worth a go diving into some follow-up items.
So we're going to start off by talking about Trump. Yay. Everybody's favourite topic, which will soon be followed up by Elon, everybody's second favourite topic, I'm sure. So we've got Trump claims that Tim Cook called him about the EU fining Apple $17 billion, which I can't imagine Tim Cook ever phoning Donald Trump, but I don't know. Maybe he did as a political move, but I don't know. I just find this really odd story. What were your thoughts?
This sounds like Trump exaggerating massively what goes on. At the same time, Trump calls Tim Apple, doesn't he? So Apple. It's not entirely uncharacteristic that somebody the size of Apple would want to keep in well with all political parties because they don't know what's going to happen. I can't believe Tim would actually do something as blatant to this to talk about the next thing, but I'd understand the urge to do so.
Do you think he had to unblock Trump's number first so they would allow him to call it?
Do you think he was blocked?
Oh, you'd want to send it straight to voicemail, wouldn't you?
You probably would, but if he's the next president of the United States, you need to take him fairly seriously.
Oh, man. It's a slippery, greasy pole, isn't it? Yeah, I guess so. So it could have happened, but as we all know, Mr. Trump likes to misremember past events. So it'd be curious to know whether it's right, but wow. Yeah, I can't believe, we're talking about Trump being future president, and the fact he's already been a past president is worrying enough.
Yeah, it's not great, but this is the world in which we currently inhabit, I think it's fair to say, isn't it? That it's very uncertain. It's by no means will Kamala Harris be the next president of the United States. In fact, given the history we had before with Trump up against Clinton, that wasn't the case then, and we all thought it was a dead cert. So I would like to call it at this point, and I think if Tim is speaking to Trump, then that's probably just good politics and good for the future of the company.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Maybe I'm being too naive on this one.
Maybe. Should we talk about another political thing?
Yeah, so Elon Musk is promising to award $1 million every day to voters as he steps up campaigning for Trump. Oh, what is going on in this world?
It's interesting that Elon, and this isn't strictly speaking a tech story, other than the fact that all of Elon's businesses are tech. SpaceX, Tesla, Boring Company, all of them are related to tech. And we have talked about him so many times on this show that it's hard to ignore when he does something like this. And laterally, the last couple of years, he just seems to have come down harder and harder on the right-hand side of the debate. Whichever side of the debate you're on, it's a weird about face, and maybe on one level you could say it in the same way as it's what Tim's doing, but he's gone a step further than Tim.
He has. It's a bit worrying for somebody, I was going to say running a major social network, but running a once major social network, because obviously it has declined. But you kind of want somebody running networks, newspapers, to be I guess somewhat in the middle, but obviously papers do take allegiances too. But I guess at least we know where his allegiance is. He's not hiding it, is he?
No, he's not. And I listened to another podcast and one that I'd recommend. The Rest is Politics with Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, and they quite often bring up our American matters, and they trace Trump's lurch to the right because of the fact that Trump has a trans child. I think the transitioning from male to female, it doesn't matter what it is. Musk is incredibly unaccepting of the fact that this happened is with his child, and because Trump is so anti-trans, this is maybe part of the trigger for why he's doing this. I struggle to have any sympathy with that. I think you should support your children no matter what their choices in life are. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned like that. I don't know.
You've got to try and guide them, but at some point they are going to become adults. Well, yours already are. Mine are heading towards that. And you've got to. My view is, I think probably similar to yours. You've got to guide them and help them and try and guide them to make the right decisions in life. But ultimately, if that's what they believe in, and obviously they're born in a different generation to us, and they are, so they're going to have different ways of thinking, as we had different ways of thinking to the previous generation and our parents. So I'm kind of with you on this. I find the whole thing very odd. Look, if somebody wants to, be a trans person, I don't know what the right terminology is. If somebody wants to change, then I support them. That's their choice. It's not something I've ever thought about doing. I don't know a lot about it, as you can probably tell. But if somebody wants to do it, I would support them in doing it.
Yep, absolutely. It's not my place to put my options and decisions on anybody else. I'm not a politician. I'm not a leader in any sort. I just think you want to support people to the best that they can be, and advocate. Where possible, if somebody believes in something, then they should be able to get on and do that. Now, I suppose, having said all that, Elon Musk is advocating for Trump in this instance, but it doesn't come from a place of love. I don't think it comes from a place particularly of respect for Donald Trump. He just sees the potential writing on the wall, and there's aces for him, I think, that should Trump become president again, if he's at the top of the tree of technical people, then his company is going to be looked on extremely favourably by a Trump government. I don't know. I got to say, I don't think they'd get on very well, Trump and Musk.
They are I don't know. It'd be interesting. It'd be super interesting. Can you imagine in a few years' time when we're thinking Elon's thinking about running for president too? It's going to be.
He can't. He's born in South Africa. He can't be president.
That's good news. Whew.
It doesn't mean he can't be.
Wait till Trump changes the rules.
Well, there is that. If Trump changes the constitution, so for example, to say have more than 2 terms in office, which is a possibility, then maybe that's another thing they'll throw out there.
Oh, can we move on? I can't bear it.
Yeah, let's move on and let's talk about Elon Musk.
Hey, brilliant. We haven't spoken about him for ages.
Not for ages. Well, we've had several shows where we've barely mentioned him, so I think let's have a quick chat. This is probably quite hurtful to Elon in one way, I think. There was a story in the Register earlier this week, the 17th of October, about Musk's X, formerly Twitter, not being important enough to be classed as a gatekeeper under the DMA, which kind of shows the drop in importance of X across the world, really. There would have been a time that X, Twitter, would have absolutely been part of the gatekeeping role. So it's interesting that the Commission has concluded that X does indeed not qualify as a gatekeeper in relation to its online social networking service. So, sorry, Elon.
Yeah. This is kind of what I said to you the other day, though. I don't think it matters whether somebody's got monopoly or is big enough. You should have the same rules for everybody. You've got a social media platform, live by these rules. You've got an operating system, live by these rules. But drawing this line on who's got monopoly and who hasn't, or who's big enough and who isn't, I don't think that sits right with me, because that can be quite an arbitrary line.
Yeah, it's very difficult for governments to legislate, as we've talked about repeatedly on this podcast, so I guess we'll have to see. I mean, it's obvious that the EU are trying to get him in other ways, because if we think about our next story, the other companies within Elon's sort of remit are a point of interest for the EU. And is it Musk himself who's violating the DMA, or the Digital Services Act in this case, rather than just picking out individual companies? And I think that's very difficult for a government to just start focusing on one person as being particularly harmful. It's different if you're breaching human rights, which possibly he may be in his companies, I don't know. But this seems a bit of an odd one to go directly after Trump rather than after the company.
After Elon, sorry, not Trump.
I keep saying, I don't know why they're conflated in my head these days.
No, why would that be?
We haven't done any stories about that, have we?
But you're quite right, though, isn't it? This is very much they're going for him rather than going for the companies, which is strange because obviously he is the CEO or chairman of various companies, but they're targeting him. That is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I guess it'll wash out. I would say, to Elon's point, that should he end up a senior figure in the United States government, I think the EU would have a very different time with their legislation against him.
Yeah, that is true. It is true. But one man seems to have a lot of power at the moment, doesn't
He really does, but the amount of money he must have, giving away $1 million a day, doing all these things. There's no reason he couldn't give $1 million a day to somebody who said they were going to vote for Trump and then them go off and vote for Kamala. I'd be quite amused by that, taking his money to go and do that. But he's got plenty to spend, and if the EU come back at him, it doesn't seem to be too much of a problem.
But how though? How though is that not illegal? Because you're basically paying for votes. Like, I don't understand how that's allowed.
But the American system is so different to ours when it comes to lobbying and fundraising, and it is a very different situation. Maybe it's probably good capitalistic, fervor to be able to pay for votes. I don't know.
Bonkers. Can we move on?
Yeah, let's move on and talk about another company that we often get on very well with. So last week we reported on Google's various problems. It looked like they were going to be broken up. They were having to allow other app stores within the Google Play Store. We went into this in some detail last week. And unsurprisingly, they've asked the Ninth Circuit for an emergency stay, which I don't blame them for, really. It's going to be a huge amount of engineering. They probably never thought that this day would come where they would have such a telling judgment against them from a court. So I'm not surprised they've made an appeal.
Yeah, and look, if Google have got to be broken up and change its practices, give them time to do it properly, not just knee-jerk into it. That's not the right thing, is it?
I mean, this isn't that, though. This is the App Store. I mean, the potentially anti-competition thing will come later. This is just allowing Epic to be within the Google Play Store and for bits of the Google Play Store to appear within the Epic Store without penalty. That's what the judge was saying, as part of this ruling. I guess from a technical point of view, that's very hard to do. I'm not surprised Google wants a bit of time to think about how it can technically do that.
Yeah, and again, do it in the right way. So you're making the right design decisions now so they don't bite you 6 months from now or impede the user in any way.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. They've said, at the request of a single competitor, Epic Games, the district court ordered extensive redesigns to Play that will expose 100 million plus US users of Android devices to substantial new security risks and force fundamental changes to Google's contractual and business relationships with hundreds of thousands of Google partners. Apple would say the same thing. It's secure. We've built it this way on purpose. I'm surprised Google haven't gone, but we're far more open than other people because we will allow sideloading of alternative app stores onto our platform. So Google were freer than Apple in this, and they've been slapped so hard.
Yeah, it's bonkers, isn't it? But like you say, I guess where there was interpretation, it means that they've been hit harder. Whereas if there was less interpretation, like Apple, where it was like, no, we're living by our rules, and they are. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all boils down over the next 12 months.
Let's do a shorter one. So last week we talked about Windows 11 24H2, the current version that has all the recall stuff baked back into it, keeping almost 9 gigs worth of storage that users couldn't delete. Microsoft are now claiming this is a reporting error, which is interesting. That's quite a reporting error, 9 gigs.
Yeah, what else is it reporting wrong?
Well, it's recording your whole screen all the time, so, maybe it's reporting that wrong too, that it's keeping it all secure for you.
I think I've just installed this on my computer. I left it downloading, so I need to go and check this out on a personal device. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like post having this update. There's
all sorts of reports of how to disable it on the internet if you want to actually know how to go into the command line in Windows. I forget what that's called. But if you go into the command line in Windows, the terminal, and run a couple of commands, you can get it to stop the recording or actually disable the feature entirely. I'd recommend anybody do that. I'd recommend anybody else leaves Windows as quickly as possible. Get a Mac or go install Linux, but some people don't have that choice, I guess.
Yeah, I probably do need to play with Linux at some point when I'm feeling brave.
I think you should. Anything else in this story?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. You had a PSA for us.
Yeah, so I've bemoaned a few times on this podcast about trying to add some Miros HomeKit smart plugs to my home. And it's been really painful. And I was getting frustrated with it. And I was trying to do it again. I was like, why can't I add this plug. Like I've bought brand new plugs from everybody's favourite online retailer. I've got them, they're fresh out of the box, and I can't add them to my home. And what it transpires that you need to do with Miros is go into the Miros app, scan the code in the app, but you need to go, I'm going to install a smart plug, and pick the exact model you've got, because there's different ways of pairing them, and then scan the code on the side of the plug, the QR code like thing, and it works. Don't do it straight in the HomeKit app, which, given that they've got HomeKit splashed all over them, is you wouldn't necessarily know to do that. I mean, I could have read some instructions, but I probably just tossed them in the bin, because I've added loads of plugs over the years, and I usually just do it straight in the home app. So anyway, what I'd like to report back is my house is now all matted on plugs, which is great, and I do think they are just a little bit quicker and a little bit more responsive. That's the only thing I would say. Whether it's worth that to you if you've got older plugs, but I have just finished the update. They're all done, but I just found it really frustrating that you had to add it in the app and you weren't doing it in the HomeKit app. It was just, a little frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds bad to me. I have spectacularly failed to get any master devices working on my network at all. I do know to do that when I add Meros things, because my HomeKit garage thing behaved in exactly the same way. I'd scan it inside of the app and then it would let me add it to HomeKit, and it was fine. I couldn't do it from directly within HomeKit, so I was doing it the right way. My Philips Hue bulbs are the devices that have never given me a second's problem. Of all the things we've had, one of the original home integration tools. They work with everything. They've worked with Google and Amazon and HomeKit. They work inside of all the various open source things that I've tried. I think Matter's dead in the water, as far as I'm concerned.
Once I've added everything, I've never had a problem. It's just been that getting them into my world, if that makes sense. That's been the problem. But surely Apple could post a better message other than fail. They could just go, have you tried adding this using the vendor's first-party app? Tick. And that would have prompted me, and off I would have gone. So a little frustrated. But anyway, I'm very happy now. My home's all sorted out. Very chuffed.
Very nice. Should we do some news?
Let's do some news.
So first story, and this kind of adds to Twitter's X's woes, I guess, is that you and I went off and explored some other social networks as we were leaving Twitter and as Mastodon was coming, and all the reasons we left Twitter or certainly stopped engaging with it. And one that was out there at the same time was a service called Bluesky. Bluesky was launched by, I want to say, Jack Dorsey. I think it was Jack Dorsey, who was one of the original founders of Twitter, actually. And he came up with a slightly more decentralized version of Twitter called Bluesky. People have flocked to Mastodon for various reasons. Lots of Brazilians flocked to Bluesky when they had the spat in the courts out there with X. But now it seems that they're flocking to Bluesky again. So I think maybe we're beginning to reach a tipping point for actual users, not bots, who are leaving the X platform and going to these alternatives. But I thought it was interesting that we're seeing a bit of a trend for people to move towards Bluesky. Have you tried it?
I've not tried it, and as you know, I'm not a big social media person, but I'm not surprised. Who's surprised at anything to do with X these days? Because you, as shown in your screen grab, still looks like Twitter, but it's got an X in the corner. The whole handling of the Twitter to X migration has been awful. So I don't understand why they're still carrying on with it. It seems very bizarre to me. And then all they're doing is shedding their user base like hand over fist. It's the whole thing is just bonkers.
I mean, what's prompted this is a really odd choice by X, where even users you've blocked are going to be able to see your posts. Now, what's the point of that?
It's the whole thing with X is just bonkers. I just don't understand any of the decisions they're making. Do you know what I mean? They're being hostile against users. They're then hostile to their advertisers. They're complaining they're losing advertisers. They're complaining they're losing users. Sorry, it's hard for me to say that. And yet they carry on doing these moves. And I don't know. And obviously there's nobody inside that can tell Elon, no, this is stupid. He just carries on doing it anyway. Yeah.
I think it's good that we've got a bit of diversity in social network. I do kind of miss the days when everybody was on one platform and you could go and find a Formula One driver, a MotoGP rider, a journalist, somebody you went to school with, and they were all there in one place. So it's a bit annoying that we're kind of fragmented. For me, Mastodon is full of enough technical people and stuff that I can find it interesting. I do miss having the odd celebrity on there. You're about the only person I actually know in real life who's on Mastodon, and you don't post anything. So such is life. But Bluesky, I find I'm on there, and it was originally invite only. So just as X was imploding, it didn't have the ability to take lots of users, whereas that's obviously changed now. It's open to all. I am still slightly nervous of a service that's as tightly locked down as Bluesky. Mastodon is open source. Anybody can spin up a server. Anybody can defederate a server that they don't like the look of. So while I'm on there, I've never posted anything, and I don't feel any great desire to do so.
Yeah, I think, I'm largely with you. I don't do a lot of social media, but I think the problem we have now, and what I used to like with something like Twitter, was, I could follow Formula One on there. I could follow some celebrities, and there's not many I would follow, but a few. And you just haven't got that Mastodon. Mastodon for me is just more tech, and it's like Twitter was when I first started on Twitter, because I just want it as a combined newsfeed. And in fact, I've gone back to more RSS as my apps of the weeks have been RSS readers. So yeah, I think the defragmentation is good in one way, but it's bad in another, because you can't just join one network and see everything you want to see.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Let's talk about Apple on this Apple-related podcast. So this is a little story that popped up this week, actually the week before, about Apple's passwords generated formats. And the format that they take, and it's just by a chap called Ricky Mandello, who sort of managed to break apart how the passwords themselves are generated, basically two nonsense words with some alphanumerics at the end of it. I think the general gist of this story is good. You're not breaking Apple's passwords that are generated within the Apple Password app using this. They just follow a pattern. And I think that there's potentially a danger there that if they follow a pattern and the pattern becomes obvious through the generation of enough passwords, then they're ultimately going to be easier to crack. And I think it's that sort of heads up. They're fine, they're secure enough, you're still going to struggle. But it is interesting that people are starting to pick up on that.
Yeah, I had noticed it because I usually use 1Password, but I was using my wife's computer, and it seems to do slightly easier to remember passwords if you really wanted to remember it, because there seems a bit more structure, whereas 1Password is just usually a jumble of letters and numbers, depending on what you've set the recipe to. But seems to make sense from Apple's perspective. It's typical Apple, isn't it? Try and do something and make it a little bit more user-friendly.
Yeah, and I think it's good. Getting people to use password managers rather than password 123 all the time is definitely for the best.
100%, and I love Apple have broken it out into passwords. It's a lot easier explaining to people that aren't big on doing passwords that you should use this app and you shouldn't know any of your passwords. That's the wrong thing. So I'm a big fan of it. I think Apple have done a good job.
Another thing Apple are trying to do a good job on is branding within the app, and I'm sort of pro and con about this. That they're normally quite corporate friendly, certainly to the bigger corporations, not if you're an independent developer. But anyway, now you're going to be able to brand email from your business. For example, in the screenshot on the Verge, if you're Walgreens, which is a pharmacy chain in the United States, you're able to put that in incoming calls, and you're able to put that in email from them with logos and things like that. And I think that's a good thing. It sort of adds to the potential reputation of incoming emails and things from organizations, and hopefully makes you feel a little more secure. If you got one from Walgreens that didn't have this kind of logo, you're more likely to think this is a scam. So it's probably a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. I do wish in the screen grab you've got on the screen just then, where you can see Apple Pay, mail, phone number, it'd be I don't understand why they didn't show you Walgreens in all three of them, just to go, look, this is how the consistent branding will look across all the apps. They upload one logo, one name, and that. I think this is good. The bit I'm more curious about is how easy it's going to be for people to fake it, phish. And that's the bit I'm a little concerned about.
Yeah. Apple also have like a business iMessage version as well, don't they? Which other than Apple, I don't think I've ever seen anyone use.
Same. Only with Apple.
Yeah. I have seen WhatsApp for business incoming thing. I can understand that's quite useful for many businesses to get behind that.
Many businesses go just WhatsApp us, don't they? So it makes WhatsApp have done an amazing job there.
They really have. I worry about the sort of Facebookification of businesses. If they're all getting behind one particular chat app, what happens when that chat app goes down? It's the same as the Apple walled garden approach. Once you're in it, why do you need to maintain your external things when all you need is the App Store version? So I understand it's a path of least resistance for businesses. It's probably quite cost effective because most of the customers are on there. But all your eggs in one basket again. It does make me uncomfortable.
Agreed.
Yeah. Next story, and again, we've had 3 Apple ones in a row, and they haven't all been entirely negative, so go us, frankly. But this one's a bit odd. So, for those that don't know, the internet works on trust. And when you visit a site that's HTTPS and you see the little secure padlock on one, what that means is that server site has been issued an authenticated certificate called an SSL or TLS certificate for that website to show, yes, that IP address, that server belongs to this company, it's all authentic and above board. These things eventually expire, and over the life of the internet, the time to expiry of these things has got shorter and shorter. What you don't want them is to expire. If your Amazon.com and your SSL certificate expires, you don't want a load of people to think your site is now unreputable, not secure, not able to maintain the various security standards and things. Anyway, I think it currently stands at 45 days or something like that between certificates. Sorry,
No, it's 13 months.
It stands at 398 days now, but Apple wants to reduce them to 45 days, which, again, I think I struggle with slightly. 14 months seems about right for one of these things as a once upon a time web admin. Keep maintaining your security certificates. If you've got a fleet of websites, it's quite difficult. You can set up automations to go to Let's Encrypt and other bodies like this to go and pull fresher certificates for you. But again, I think it may be another headache for sysadmins to do this, which is why this article in the Register has got them raging about this potential plot to reduce the time to expiry of these certificates.
I can understand it. So at the moment, it's 13 months, which is just over a year, which does kind of make sense. It used to be about 8 years prior to that. And I get why they want to reduce it. It does make sense with your security out on. But then you've got a pragmatism hat to wear, and that does not feel like long enough. That's just over a month. It's a month and a half. That feels like a lot. That's a lot of certificates to maintain. Ones when they don't, even if you have automation, ones if they don't update. Me that runs a corporate IT team is thinking, that sounds like a right pain. And if you're running a big estate, you're going to need somebody just to manage that. So I think it's a little concerning.
I agree. And we all know this web-based infrastructure is really quite old at this point. There's lots of it isn't bang up to date, doesn't support the ability to automate it and all that good stuff. So there's an example at the bottom of the article of somebody who has 20 appliance-like services. So immediately you've got them expiring at different dates. If it's particularly old things, they're not able to renew them. And that's a manual process this admin has to do for 20 different things. That's probably a reasonable amount of work for somebody, as well as the day job.
Yeah, completely agree. And this is something that IT teams will just have to fit in around everything else. And then people will get upset when websites are down because this hasn't been done or they can't log in or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we'll keep an eye on this and see if Apple, as they have been doing recently, extend the deadline a little bit further.
Well, that is what's going to happen. Or maybe there's a compromise in the middle and maybe it's not every year, every 13 months, every 7 months. And maybe that's where it stays. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Something else that's gone a bit badly wrong. We've talked a little bit about on this podcast about the new Qualcomm snapdragon chips. They're very good chips. Microsoft has mostly thrown its weight behind them with Copilot and all the rest of it. Still no Linux driver, Qualcomm, come on. Anyway, they also released a dev box, Qualcomm, so developers who were building things for Windows wouldn't need to buy one of the laptops in the same way Apple did its developer transition toolkits, which was like a Mac Mini with the new Apple Silicon chips in it. They did it in the Intel days. They gave a Mac Pro to some developers to be able to ensure that their code worked on the old PowerPC binaries and for the new Intel-based ones. Anyway, there's been some reports in the internet of people waiting months. I mean, the chips have been launched about 7 or 8 months at this point. Qualcomm haven't been sending the boxes out. When the boxes have come out, they're not very well made. They run very, very hot. They've got fans in them, all sorts of stuff. And it's extremely expensive. The Apple ones, which I think were $499 if memory serves, something like that.
It wasn't a lot.
And you had to give them back at the end of the period, but then you got a voucher from Apple to actually go and buy the actual shipping hardware for $500.
You eventually got a voucher. There was, I think Apple changed. You weren't going to get anything, and then they did listen, and they did go, actually, we will give you a voucher.
But this is worse. These are $900. They're not particularly well made. They're not great chips. I think they're the slower end version of the chips as well. And actual hardware has been out on the streets for quite a long time now. I don't think it leaves developers in a very good place. And actually, if you looked at Apple and the Vision Pro transition, this is quite analogous to this, isn't it? By the time they got shipping hardware out, it was too expensive. consumers already had it in their hands, and maybe you've missed the bus a little bit on what you hope developers are going to be able to do.
Yeah. I'm surprised to hear Qualcomm. Part of me thinks, why did you bother? Why don't you just get another company to do it, and you provide the chips, and then maybe give a discount. You know, you can give. You know, if you're a developer, you register for it. Maybe you pay $50, but you get it for 50% of the retail price or something like that. I don't know, because you don't want everybody doing it. But it's an odd one, isn't it? Why they even bothered?
Yeah, very strange. But then I guess they're going to sell them. Just go and buy one of the laptops at this point.
But that's it. Just go and buy a device. That's why they could have done it. Register for a dev kit. We authenticate you, and then we give you money off to go and buy the HP's Omni book, which is £1,000. You can get it for 700 quid or something.
Yeah, never, ever, ever, ever buy HP laptops. They're dreadful.
Okay. I've never bought one, so I wouldn't know.
And don't. They used to be good. They're dreadful. Go and buy a ThinkPad or Microsoft Surface or something better.
Yeah, I was going to say Dell because that's what we buy, but I'm not sure I can recommend them at this point. They're getting better.
They're getting better. You get ups and downs with Dell hardware, don't you?
It depends on the model. Have they got the firmware right? Is it too new and they haven't got it embedded in yet? Because they do so many models. I think they struggle to keep up with their estate.
I think an XPS 13 back in the day was a good laptop, and there is an XPS 13 version of the Qualcomm. But I think the Microsoft one is probably the best one. Asus make very good laptops as well these days on the PC side, I think.
There are some great, you know, the baselines are so good now. I think laptops have generally got so good. Even much cheaper brands make a great device.
Yeah, I agree. Something that's finally come to the UK, it was talked about at WWDC, the iPhone event, is that you've been able to have roadside assistance in the United States if you're out of signal with your satellite functionality built into your iPhones. Well, roadside assistance is now available in the UK with Green Flag. I'm not with Green Flag, I'm with the RAC, but I'm glad to see that this is something that's there.
But if you haven't got roadside assistance, can you just message this? Because you need to create a new message when you've got satellite, you know, help via, when you've got satellite messaging, you go into create a new message, you type roadside in, and can you not just pay them some money? You know, if you're really in a bad state of affairs, will they not just come and sort you out and then they just debit you immediately? I don't know.
Yeah. While Green Flag offers membership packages, you don't need to have one in place. So, yeah, you'll be able to do a one-time call-out fee.
And I'm sure it'll be expensive.
It absolutely is. I remember once trying to rejoin the AA because it had expired and I hadn't noticed. And it was like 500 quid they wanted there and then.
Because what are you going to do?
Yep. Green Flag is one of the cheaper providers in the UK, that's for sure. But yeah, this is interesting. Just on this, I thought we had satellite messaging non-emergency available in the UK already.
Yeah.
I had no service when I was on a beach in Angle this weekend, and I had no option to do this. I could do SOS, and that was it.
Oh, then I don't know. I thought we had that too. Maybe that's coming later. Maybe that is coming later because wasn't that announced just recently?
Maybe it's an 18.2 thing. I don't know, but I thought I'd read that this was a thing that would be available in the UK. You could just use satellite messaging, but I didn't have the option.
I think it's part of the problem now. Apple's got so many features that are so fragmented. It's hard to know who's got what in which country anymore, and on which OS,
and on which beta. And it's. I think the phones are new enough to support it, but who knows where we are in the software cycle?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly that. We've both got the right phones, but are we in the right software cycle, as you put it?
One thing we both have that might not be as good for us as we'd hoped are standing desks.
I'm standing as we speak.
This was a story in The Guardian this week about some researchers finding that maybe standing desks aren't the panacea that they thought we'd be. A lot of the thinking for the time was we sit around too much, particularly those of us in IT. We need to get moving. So get off your bums and stand at your desk and even work out on a treadmill. But a bit of research says they don't reduce the risk of stroke or heart failure.
So I don't think I really bought mine for stroke or heart failure. Like to avoid those risks. Obviously, that would be a great byproduct. I more bought mine because I think it's healthy for me. If I'm in meetings all day, like 8 hours worth of meetings, I think it's quite healthy for me to stand up or do a different position. So in my room here, I've got a standing desk. I've got an old wooden chair, literally a 100-year-old chair next to me, which sometimes I sit on that and I lower my desk and I'll sit and do meetings that way. Or I can go and sit on the couch. And I just think it's healthy to be in different positions, not just slouching in a chair, which is partly why I did it. And I just thought it's good to sit and stand. And also then when you finish for the day, maybe you go and watch some TV with your partner, you then sit down. So I was just trying to have that. And for me, I've got like a little wobble board I stand on underneath. So I just move a little bit and sway. And I just thought it would do me some good for my back more than that. But that was my rationale. And I think, I don't know, for me, I think it is good just not to be in the exact same position.
You're probably right, and I'm sure it's probably helping in some way. The sort of key takeaway from the study is that standing for too long will not offset an otherwise sedentary lifestyle. That's sitting around and not doing a lot. And could be risky for some people in terms of circulatory health. We found that standing more does not improve cardiovascular health over the long term and increases the risk of circulatory issues. Certainly, lots of nurses and people who used to stand for a living would end up with varicose veins and things like that. That was a consequence of being on your feet all the time. So it doesn't really surprise me that it's not a cure-all. I think it's just, for me, standing desks are one element of actually just trying to be a bit more healthy in general, as you say. Get out and walk the dog. Go and do a little bit of slightly more intensive cardiovascular exercise. Don't sit in your arse all day. I mean, that's the be-all and end-all, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it like with everything there? Like when you have a meal, you should have some veg, you should have some protein, you should have some carbs, a little bit of everything. It's kind of like that with, I think, how your posture is and how you sit, you stand, you walk. Do a little bit of everything. That's surely got to be the aim here. Not doing any one thing is going to be good for you. You need to exercise all your muscles.
But as with all things, I think human beings like to think they found a cure. And if the cure is just do a standing desk, that's going to fix you. It's never that simple.
That's fair. It's never that simple. I would agree. Also, please note, I am not a doctor unlike you, so do not take any medical advice from me.
And I'm not that kind of doctor.
Yeah, fair point. But I thought it was good just to get that in there.
Yeah, don't take medical advice from us. But there's no harm in promoting a healthier lifestyle. I think all healthcare professionals and researchers would say that was right. One thing isn't, if it's a quick fix, it's probably not real. I mean, that's also
more
fair.
Placebo.
Yeah. Having given that very cautious health advice, should we do some media?
Yeah, let's do some media. You've been busy this week by the looks of it.
I haven't played a lot of games, but I have managed to do a bit of research around media stories. So first one popped up on 9 to 5 Mac earlier this week, October the 17th. Apple will now let artists publish their concert set list. This is one thing that's been missing for me for a long time from Apple Music. On Spotify, quite often, the second the concert finished, somebody would post a playlist of that exact concert with the date from that artist he'd been at, and if possible with live versions too. So I think this is a great thing. If you're really enthused about a particular order that your artist of choice has just played for you, let them publish it.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I love Apple Music a lot, but there are some frustrations with it. And we've had no announcements on it. Apple need to get better at this. Where's your roadmap, Apple? What's coming? I guess they don't want to share it too much in advance because they don't, if they've got something groundbreaking, they don't want Spotify to do it, but or to do it before they do. But come on, Apple. I don't know, it just seems to be really moving slowly. It feels like typical Apple can't walk and talk at the same time. They've got all the engineers over there when they need some over here.
It does feel like the bare minimum sometimes. We're quite happy to take your money. We'll add the new albums and artists and things as they come along, but there's really not a lot of innovation in Apple Music.
Nope.
And
which probably leads me to something I've been playing with. As I was messaging you just the other day, I've done some work with Music Kit, which developers can use to hook into the Apple Music functionality, and just starting to play with that and understand a bit more, because I like Apple Music. It's got most of the songs and music I like on it, but I wanted to get more. I just didn't like how the app worked, because I listen to a lot of albums or pick songs off albums because that's just how my mind remembers them, and I struggle with Apple for that, whereas it wants me to listen to more individual tracks. Whereas, as you know, I want to put on a different album or an EP or whatever it may be. So I've been playing with the Apple Music Kit, and it is quite comprehensive. But at some point, it does worry me. Apple haven't really updated it for a couple of years. Are they going to do anything with it ongoing? Or it feels like typical Apple. We've done it, but we might not keep it going. You don't want to pin your life around it. But it is interesting playing with it and understanding how they've got all this data underneath. And I do worry how Apple do such a poor job of displaying it in the app.
Yeah. Try harder, Apple. I mean, we know what Apple Music Classical's like. But even that something like this is dependent on the band employing somebody to keep it up to date. Spotify's model of allowing fans to actually publish those playlists is probably more sensible, because it's going to be faster, rather than it being dependent on some struggling three-piece band that's just finished a gig and has gone to the pub afterwards publishing their set list.
Yeah,
let the fans
fair.
do it.
And surely the band should be motivated, because you're going to want people to play your songs more, so you get a bit more inflow of your royalty payments.
Yeah, and if you've just been on main stage at Glastonbury and your set list is there the second you finish, you're going to have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people looking for that exact set list to listen to in the car the next day.
Yep. Yeah, true. Why wouldn't you do it? Like I said, Apple's slowness just drives me mad.
It's all right. They haven't got much money. Poor struggling company.
They haven't, but what are they doing with it?
One thing that's not struggling is Slow Horses. Slow Horses has been renewed for season 6 on Apple TV Plus. I'm delighted.
What season are we on? We've just had 4.
4.
They've shown us a trailer for 5.
Yep.
And now they've renewed for 6. Fantastic. I'm looking over my shelf. So I've only read the first 4, so I need to go on and read the next 2. And then once I've read the next 2, there's then a further 2 books to read. So there's 8 in total at the moment.
I was a bit worried it was coming to an end, that we're about to run out of books, but it seems there's plenty left, so this is great.
It's fantastic. No, so we've got 8 in total, and you got to assume he's writing another one, because why wouldn't you?
Oh, you're a writer writes, you hope. I mean, he might get bored and move on to another series, but I presume Apple are reversing big trucks of money up to his house.
Yep, and he's got another series as well, which is also being televised, I believe, at the moment. Down Cemetery Road, I think it's called. I bought the book because they've republished it in hardback recently, but it's an old book from about 20 years ago. So I'd imagine Mick Herron's doing all right.
I'm sure he is. So there's a little synopsis for Season 6. It will be based on 2 novels, apparently. In Season 6, the spies head out on the run as Diana Taverner, Kristen Scott Thomas, and Balsam, in all in fatally high-stakes game of retaliation and revenge. The 6th season will be based on 2 of Mick Herron's novels, Joe Country and Slough House, which are the 6th and 7th books in the series.
That's annoying. Why are they munging 2 books into one series? Like, surely, I'm amazed they're not eking it out. Do you know what I mean? Like, when we had, like, the last Harry Potter, they split it into 2 films. I'm amazed they're merging it into one, but that's a bit frustrating.
It is a bit frustrating. Something else that might be less frustrating and still staying with Apple TV is that Ted Lasso Season 4 sets January start date, as apparently we wait for an Apple TV Plus announcement. I genuinely don't know how excited I am about this.
Womp. Do you know what? I've gone back and watched the whole of Season 1 again. Quite enjoyed it. There's bits I've forgotten. I think I mentioned this. I've watched most of Season 2 as well. And there's some bits where I think they went a bit far, and it's like, if they'd left that bit out, I could maybe watch this with my kids. And part of me wishes they did that. I'm interested to know what they do with it. I believe they're going to be filming in the UK and the US. So whether there's a dual storyline going on there, I don't know. Be interested to see how that's going to work. I'm always curious and nervous because I've really enjoyed Ted Lasso generally throughout. I just think some of it's very funny. I think there's some good life lessons in there. But I don't want them to ruin it. And some of Season 3 wasn't fantastic.
Yeah, and some of Season 2 wasn't fantastic either. I think Season 1 was such a high that everything was going to be a drop. And it hit at just the right moment in the pandemic as well.
So good. We all needed some feel-good TV. And
it was great.
delivered.
Between that and Great British Bake Off, that's exactly what I needed at the outset of the pandemic. I worry about this because the quality level was definitely dropping, as the series went on. And I don't think it's unfair to say that. There were still the odd really good episode, but the general trend was downwards. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think we will see. And what worried me, I think, Season 3, I think they just had too many strands of storylines that weren't needed. And they were trying to fill it. So it'll be interesting. They need to go back to Season 1. Keep it tight, keep it short. Sometimes that's the best.
Yeah, I think that. Speaking of things not being as good as they could be, are you watching the current season of Taskmaster?
Started it, but we have fallen behind. Even I said to my son just the other night, should we watch Taskmaster? And he was like, no, I'm not really bothered. I was like, that's unlike you to say that.
Yeah, I don't think it's been their strongest season. There's, as always with Taskmaster, the odd task that you think that's genius, and the comedians perform extremely well on it. But there was an episode 2 weeks ago that I think is probably the worst episode of Taskmaster I've ever seen. Had a task that was just pointless. I mean, they're all pointless, but it was not unfunny and pointless.
Whoa, I mean, funny is fine. I mean, they should all be funny, but
yeah,
they are all pointless. But it is a worry. Are they running out of steam, do you think?
I wouldn't blame them if they were. I mean, 18 seasons on and 17 seasons of it have been gold. Well, maybe 16 seasons that have been gold. There's always the odd duff episode, but never that bad. There's always the odd duff task over the course of a season. I'm struggling with this one. That we've had a couple now that have been very average in this season. Last season was definitely not a high point. There was the odd genius part of it, but I think you might be right. I think unless we see a sort of uptick in quality again, Taskmaster might be reaching the end of its golden streak.
Which would be a shame because I genuinely love it. But they've done so many, and it's hard to get the right mix of people every time with the right mix of tasks. That's a tough thing to pull off. They've had a really good batting average, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and again, if it goes off on a high, I'm okay with that. But I suspect they'll milk the cash cow for as long as they can.
Yeah, well, you would, wouldn't you? If you're Alex Horn, you're gonna, it's the thing you're known for. It's paying all your bills.
Yep. Should we talk about a film I watched this week?
You watched a film?
I watched a film. I watched Star Trek Beyond for some reason. I was fancying a bit of Chris Pine and Carl Urban action.
I think I've seen this.
Have you?
But it's so long ago now, I can't remember it.
So, Star Trek films were reborn by J.J. Abrams, and I want to say something like 2006. It was a while ago at this point. Lens flare-tastic. They were reimagining the Star Trek universe. A new younger Captain Kirk, McCoy, and Spock. Great cast, great film, bit lens flary, like I say. The sequel, which starred Benedict Cumberbatch, was Star Trek Into Darkness, which was a sort of remake of The Wrath of Khan, back with the original crew. And then they did Star Trek Beyond not long afterwards, which was directed by Justin Lin, who I think was one of the Fast and Furious directors.
So they started in 2009.
2009.
Then we had, which was Star Trek. And then we had Star Trek Into Darkness 2013, Star Trek Beyond 2016.
2016, yeah. Star Trek Into Darkness was not very good, even though it had Paul Weller in it. Not Paul Weller. The guy who played RoboCop. I'll let you look that up while I'm talking, but the actor that played RoboCop was the bad guy in Star Trek Into Darkness, and then, no spoilers by this point, Benedict Cumberbatch was the sort of next bad guy with it. Anyway, I hadn't seen Star Trek Beyond.
Peter Weller.
Peter Weller, that's it. Paul Weller's the singer. Star Trek Beyond, I went to see in the cinema. I didn't go and watch it again. I thought it was a bit of fluff, but didn't really think about it that much. And I'm a big Star Trek fan. Really enjoyed it on a second watch, actually. It's got Idris Elba in it as well, which I'd kind of forgotten that he was in there. And just looking at the Rotten Tomatoes scoring of it here, it's really good. I talked about The Beach last week. The Beach, which was scoring, so I think it was 34% or something like that. It was really poor showing. This was 86% from critics and 80% from fans. So if you want just a dumb Star Trek film to enjoy with randomly a motorbike in it and some Idris Elba and some awesome Carl Urban, because he's always awesome, go and watch Star Trek Beyond.
It's also got Zachary Quinto in it, who I quite like from a Wall Street film called Margin Call. He was fantastic in that. Played the guy who basically figured out the crash that was about to happen for this pseudo fake company to offload all its assets before everybody else. It looks quite good. I remember watching this film, and I was not a Trekkie like you, so I had no history. I actually quite enjoyed these run of films, I think. A bit of sci-fi. I had a rough idea what Star Trek was, obviously, but I'd never really seen any of the films or TV shows, and I thought they were okay. They didn't set the world on fire, but I didn't think they were awful either.
No, they're very entertaining films, actually. And this one is exactly that. It's an entertaining film with some amazing CGI that stood up really well, actually.
Slight digression just while we're here. On the right-hand side, I've just seen most popular things to watch. It says The Wild Robot, which is some form of kids animated film. It's got 98% rating. Because I was looking for a film to take my children to. There was talk of the Transformers, but I've just seen Wild Robot, 98%. I mean, that sounds pretty good.
That's very good, isn't it? 98% critics, 98% audience. So yeah,
must be doing something good. So I'm interested to see that now. I think because I was looking for something cool to watch with the kids.
Well, talking of something cool to watch with the kids, Apple have dropped it. Well, it's not Apple that have dropped it, but a filmmaker has dropped his drone shot of Chicago. I think I sent you the link for this in the week. And it's all shot on iPhone 16 Pro with some drone stuff. He's obviously a professional filmmaker. This appealed to me for two reasons. One was, I think I was in Chicago when he was shooting this, because the thing that's on one of the theatre billboards as it goes past, I remember seeing. And it just looks phenomenal, actually.
It would be amazeballs if you were in this. It does look phenomenal. Like, fair play. I know he's got some good tech, but he's obviously got some amazing skills to do this.
Absolutely does. It was interesting. There was another article that I saw where they said actually the iPhone 16 Pro isn't that big an upgrade than the iPhone 15 Pro, which isn't surprising. So what this is just filmmaker skill as much as the technology that's in the iPhone 16 Pro.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I won't play the whole thing. Go off to YouTube and watch it and give him the clicks. Don't watch it via me. But yeah, very impressive.
Fantastic. I must confess, there's one film I have bought this week. I say bought. I bought Twisters because I used to love Twister, and I think we've spoken about it. How they've done the remake. So I picked it up because it was on sale, and I'm going to try and watch that in the next week because I just fancy an easygoing film, and I think that will scratch my itch of something new, but I know the concepts before going in. So I'm looking forward to that.
Fair enough. Games?
Games. So I've played a new game on your recommendation last week. So I've played Commandos Origins, which is a demo on Steam, and it may be a demo on other platforms too. But what a game. Love it. So it's based upon Commandos by Pyro Studios back in the late 90s, early 2000. It was a very, in essence, you had a big map, you have some commandos, you have to go kill a bunch of German guards in World War II and usually blow something up or escape or whatever it may be. And you've got 1 to 5 or 6 commandos. They've all got various things in their tool chest that they can do, like stab people, carry people, row a boat, scuba gear, etc. And I loved this game. I played it a lot. It was quite simple in its implementation back in the late 90s, like I say. And this Commandos Origins, for me, has really modernised what I played back then, kept some of the similar look and feel, but they've made it a full 3D world. And I genuinely really enjoyed myself. I had a good hour playing it, and then I went back. It's only like one demo level, like a tutorial. And I went back and played it all straight through again because I just genuinely enjoyed it and thought I'll have another go.
Fair enough. I saw this and I thought of you, so I sent it to you immediately, and you immediately went off and played it, which amused me no end.
For me to immediately do something means it's got to be scratching some itch. But also, there was zero friction. Literally just logged into the Steam app, pushed to download the demo button. 21 gigs for one level, though, which felt a bit aggressive to me. But there's no friction in doing that. Like, the PC was ready to go, off I went. If I could have bought it, I would have bought it.
Fair enough. I did try installing it on my Linux install. I run Arch, by the way. And yeah, I managed to download it, install it, and played it perfectly in Linux, the demo. It was a bit of stuttering while it loaded some textures in at the start, I think. But other than that, I had a decent experience with it. I did the very first little bit. I sort of conked some guard in the head and hit him in a bush, I think. And then I got bored and switched it off. It's not really my kind of game. But yeah, the graphics were nice. Music was good. Quite atmospheric. It looked like the introduction to the tutorial was good. And you were texting me saying how amazing it was. So all good.
Yeah, it just really reminded me of the game I used to play 20 odd years ago, and it just felt they modernised it in a really sympathetic manner, and I thought it was quite clever, some of the clicks they do. But for me, I love a single-player campaign game. This massively scratches that itch. I don't know if it's going to have any multiplayer, but I'm really looking forward to coming out. It did feel like the beta was a true beta. There's still some work to be done to smooth out some rough edges. So curious to know when it's coming. It says it's going to come out in 24, which I was starting to question because there isn't that long left in 24, but who knows?
Yeah, well, good luck. Hopefully it comes. Anyway, you got to play the demo, so that's nice.
As soon as I saw I could play a demo, I was there. Like, I watched the video. I was like, this looks great. So, yeah, that perked my week up.
Excellent. I'm glad to have given you that little joy in your week. Main show?
Let's go on to the main show. So it's been a week for tablets this week.
It has. And in stunning news, we didn't say at the top of the show, Apple releases new devices.
A new device.
Well, new device in some colours.
So I texted you early in the week. I was like, have you seen the news? Apple have dropped the iPad mini update. So it does question whether there's going to be an Apple event, which to me, if they drop a press release a week, that would be great and get some of this stuff out. Or it'd be nice if they did an event. It'd be curious to know where they land. But for whatever reason, they've dropped the mini now, which I think once you've actually had a look at it, kind of makes sense why they just did it as a press release.
Yeah, there's not a lot here, is there? It's the same form factor. It's compatible with the new pencil, and they've put in a new processor, and that's it.
I think they've done the most Apple-y of Apple-y things here. If anybody thought they were going to do a lot more to this, you didn't see the iPad Pro announcement earlier in the year would be my view. Look, this device would be amazeballs if it had Face ID. If when you docked it, you could do Stage Manager, But then you're buying an iPad Pro at that point, so just get on and buy the iPad Pro. So I think it's what I expected. They've done a few bits. They've updated the Wi-Fi as you're showing us now. They've updated the Bluetooth, the chip's faster. It's got a bit more storage in it. It's gone from 64. They definitely shouldn't be selling a device with 64 gig. But what it feels to me is they got this out because they're trying to get all their devices to be Apple Intelligence friendly. Because where they probably want to be, whether it's going into next year, is going to, at some point next year, they're going to turn around and go, all our devices support Apple Intelligence. That's where they want to be on brand, isn't it? Because we've got the SE coming, we've got new Macs coming. Don't know what they're doing on HomePod front yet or Apple TV, no rumours. But it very much feels we want to get, we want all our devices we're selling from in 25, I guess, all our new devices will be AI friendly. And that's what they're trying to achieve. So it ticks the AI box for them, even though nobody should rush out and buy this for the AI capability. It sorts out the pencil a little bit more. Feels like once they update the base iPad, we can drop some of the older Apple Pencils, the 1 and the 2, and just have the USB-C one and the Pro. And that would be a great place for us to be. I genuinely believe that. But this device, it's a great device. And I was hovering over it. Shall I order one? I loved my previous Mini. I sold it to a friend of mine. He's now getting a lot of use out of it. But actually, I reached the point I don't need it anymore because Teams finally supports using my external monitor's webcam. So whilst I'm plugged into my monitor, I can use my iPad to take notes. And I'd rather have less than more devices. And Rod, you are just bringing up the price. So this is a $500 iPad, which roughly equates in pounds, if I remember correctly, for the base model, no cellular, 128 gig of storage. It's a great device if you want it for note-taking, reading books, occasional iPad usage, but it's a lot of money.
And so it's $499 in the base model with nothing else added to it, no folios or anything. If you add a pencil, I don't think I did anything more of that, it's $578. That's a huge amount of money for something that really hasn't changed all that much.
I would agree with that, but I'm not surprised it hasn't changed much. Apple's not going to do masses more with it, are they? Because otherwise they're not going to need their other models. What gets me, though, is how many different models of iPad we have. When iPad's not their biggest line. You've got more iPads than you have MacBooks. Do you know what I mean? It just seems strange to me that they put so much effort into the iPad line, but it's probably their worst performing line. At some point, you kind of want to go Apple, just do the Pro and the normal one, drop the rest. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it feels like it's a distraction. And the 11-inch Pro that I've got, when I was starting to look at it, isn't actually that much bigger than this little iPad. It's only 11 inches. It's such a tight, light unit. For me, I just want one device, and that's what I've gone with.
Yeah, you look at the pricing of these things, and fair enough, the base model iPad is $349. An iPad Air is $599. So it's only $99 more for, what's probably a better iPad. But I'm not enough of an expert to say. I feel that they're overpriced for what they are, particularly on the smallest screen size. You're not a million miles away from a big iPhone.
They're overpriced for what most people will use them for. That's where you're getting to. And like you say, $99 more for the Air. Most people should just get the Air. You can do so much more with it. The reason the Mini exists is because people put it in their pocket, or they've got it, they're a pilot and they can put it in their, their outfit or whatever it may be and use it for their maps and things, and it scratches that itch. But most people get the Air for not much more money. You won't regret it.
Yep. And they fixed an issue with it as well.
Yeah, which you'd hope, wouldn't you, that they fixed what was jelly scrolling. So this is when you scroll down on the original iPad Mini, the 6th Gen 1, the screen would wobble a little bit, and it just was not up to Apple's standards. It was horrible. So it appears they've fixed this jelly scrolling. Now, when I had mine, I must confess I didn't really have a problem with it. The screen, though, is not a great screen. That is, one thing I will say. When the iPad Pro screens are so good, the Mini screen was very lackluster in comparison.
Yeah, it's not very good. Like you say, one of the reasons you pay a little bit more for Apple equipment is you don't want to have things like that going on with it. And if it is, then that's not great.
No, not great at all. But
at least they fixed it.
But they have improved performance by, I don't know, a reasonable amount, I guess. The performance has gone up because it's got the same chip that's in my iPhone, the iPhone
A17.
the A17 Pro chip, which everybody thought was going to be a one and done because it's quite expensive for them to manufacture, but they've obviously kept it lying around. There's talk that it might be a binned chip from all the iPhones where it hasn't got as many GPU cores on it, and they've just popped it in here. But it looks reasonable, and obviously they've increased the RAM in this phone. So this iPad is basically the iPhone 15, the innards of the iPhone 15 in a small iPad. So it's got reasonable performance improvements, for the multi-core and the single core. So it is quite good. I think it's a good little device, but it is expensive for what you get.
I think they should enable you can put a SIM card in these things. They should enable the cellular radios as well, and not cellular radios, but to turn it into a phone. Yeah. There are people who would buy this and use it as a phone, and at that point, it's a super interesting device.
100% agree. For me, I could make that work, and I just have my AirPods on, I guess. But then you've got the whole app problem because Apple have got iPadOS and iPhone and iOS, and at some point it feels like they need to merge those two back into one. But that's a question for another day. But this would be their tablet. Maybe they're keeping this around because at some point they're going to go, if your apps work fine on this iPad, they will work fine on our new foldable screen whenever they launch, if they ever launch it.
If they ever launch it. They may have been a little burned by the Vision Pro. Amazon did some stuff as well.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I didn't see this coming because Amazon quite hit miss when they do their product updates. So they've updated the whole of the Kindle line by the looks of it. So we've got new Kindle for kids, new regular Kindles, new Paperwhites, new Scribe as well, and they've brought out what they're calling Coloursoft, which not loving I don't know who picked the Kindle as a name, which is an odd name, and then who's come up with some of the names. Scribe I thought was a good name. This is the Kindle you write with, but Coloursoft, I get it, but I'm not sure about it. So I looked at this because I do have a Kindle Scribe in my hands, which I used quite a lot, but now, like I've said at the top of the show, I can now use my iPad for taking notes. I think my Kindle Scribe's going to go, which I'm a little gutted by. But when I saw this release come out, I scanned through it, and I'm going to start just with the Kindle Scribe quickly. It's been upgraded, but they've done nothing with it. They've changed the appearance of it. It looks very nice, but there's no real changes to the Kindle Scribe at all. You can get it in a teal colour, but it doesn't do colour. The OS isn't really any different. I was for a 2-year wait. Apple have just taken a load of grief over a 3-year wait on the iPad Mini, but I'd say the same to Amazon with the Kindle Scribe. Like, you entered the market, you're the biggest company that make these sort of devices. How have you done so little to the Kindle Scribe in a 2-year period? So I was a bit disappointed, but then it just confirmed my decision. Actually, I should just exit the Scribe piece. I've tried it. I'll sell my model on and do something else.
I don't know. I mean, what is the market for these sort of e-note takers anyway? People are really
interested. It's not massive, is it? I mean, that's where you go and get the Remarkable Pro, which does look amazing, and it's colour. And it seemed to me when Remarkable came out with the Remarkable Pro just a couple of months ago that surely the Scribe's going to come out with colour next month. And then here we are, and they've done, like I say, literally nothing to the Kindle Scribe. It's very disappointing, the Scribe, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. But it's certainly something that never appealed to me, is the Kindle Scribe. That it's too big. If I'm going to carry something that large, I've got my laptop, so I'm going to take notes on my laptop. I can't read my own handwriting anyway, so that doesn't really help in any way. If I'm marking up a document or I'm reviewing a document as a reviewer, I want to be able to type something. I can type faster than I write. So it feels like an awkward device to me. I get if you're a super note-taking person, which you are, awesome. I'm glad that it sort of scratches that itch. But as you're able to do that with your iPad, not have to carry 2 devices potentially, it's a dead device to you.
I loved it, but it was big, and I did question myself sometimes for taking it because it's as big as my iPad Pro. But like I say, now my iPad Pro will work with external webcams for Teams. I'm done. I can just hold my iPad in my hand with one cable, plug it into a webcam, and I can be on the webcam. People can look at me. I can take my notes, and it doesn't matter the orientation of that device. Whereas obviously it did when I was using that as a camera. I really enjoyed it. I just think the problem with the Scribe is they just haven't done enough with it, and it is a small market. Whereas when you see what Remarkable have done, they've done loads. They've really iterated on the product. Amazon have just done an Apple here and just done a facelift, which is disappointing. Hey, should we go on to the main Kindles though, because they're a bit more exciting, aren't they? So
yep.
There's updated Paperwhites and regular Kindles. No more Kindles with buttons though for page turn, which I do quite like a page turn button. So I'm surprised that they're not really doing anything with page turning. That feels like a bit of a miss to me. But I don't know. What are your views? Are you comfortable with it, just using the screen to tap forwards?
I think it's a Paperwhite I've got, I think, and I do just use the screen. I don't think it has got a page advance or page turn button. So I've got used to that. I know, listening to Jason Snell, who's far bigger into the e-reader stuff than I am, he is stuck with the Kobo lineup because they have got physical page turn buttons. It doesn't bother me. I'm quite happy to just tap the side of the screen and have the page turn or swipe it. I don't think it's that big a deal. I think it gets back to my point that I made about the market size for something like this. How many people rush out and buy a new Kindle every 18 months? I bet it's really small. Most people will buy the thing they need to read on holiday. They've got a couple of hundred books on there. They may have the odd audiobook on there. If they mark it up, they mark it up. I don't think there's a massive untapped market of people looking for the flashiest e-readers.
I think that's fair. You see them when you're on holiday, don't you? Most people keep a Kindle for donkey's years. They're not fussed about updating the software on it. I've got Paperwhite as well. I love it because it's waterproof. I read it. We have a hot tub. I use it in there all the time. I take it on holiday. I'm very comfortable taking it like to the beach or around the pool because you know that it's going to be all right. And it charges by USB-C. For me, as soon as I moved over to USB-C, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. So I think this is solid. The most interesting thing is the color one. I think that the rest of the lineup is a light upgrade. I don't really miss the buttons going from them. As long as the screens are high enough resolution and have backlights, which they do, I'm happy enough. So the fact that there's a color one now is interesting, but I don't think it's a device for me.
Yeah, so I had a look at the color one. I thought, do I want to go? I read a lot of books. So do I want to go get a color one? But I don't read a lot on my Kindle. Now, I'm going off to London tomorrow, and I probably, on my way home, I would normally read a book, but I'll often just take a physical book and chuck it in my bag. And so part of me was like, oh, maybe I should take my Kindle with me and read it. And I thought, I probably won't because I'm reading a story in a physical book. So I do like it. I like the idea of it. But I think what I would want is, can I have it in colour when I'm in the main bit of the OS, but then when I go into reading mode, can you just flip it back into black and white for me? Because I don't want it to be colour. I don't want the experience to be worse. But I think it's one of those devices you probably need to see it and touch it and try it.
Yeah, so making the interface, it says in the Verge article, it makes the whole interface a little nicer. What this isn't, I don't think, is a comic book reader app. That's the point. I can understand having colour on the screen if you're big into your e-comics. But this isn't physically bigger, I don't think, than a standard Kindle Paperwhite or standard Kindle.
That's where the Scribe could have stepped in, I think. Why, if the Scribe became colour, that would be a great comic book device. And I've tried reading comics on it. It's really good, but it's black and white.
Yeah, and some comics are fine in black and white, but I think it would be an advantage to the device that you're getting some. And then the true killer feature of the Kindle, other than the ones you've talked about, you can just chuck it in a bag and it's backlit and all the rest of it, is the battery life lasts forever and you can get lots of books on there. And that's what's really important about that. So I don't know if having this colour screen will impact the battery in any way for fairly minimal sort of gains in the actual reading experience.
Yeah, but it is a 300 ppi screen, so they have kept the resolution as high as the other devices. For me, I think, look, next time I'm in, a John Lewis here in the UK or a Curry's, and after the end of the month, I'm going to go and try one of these out because I think it is a device I'd like to try out to see if it does add any value. But for a man who's got 2 Kindle Oasis kicking around and a Paperwhite, I probably need to offload a couple of Kindles before I buy any more.
We haven't mentioned the price of these. Do you know what it is?
Oh no, go on.
I haven't looked. I'm genuinely asking. Do you know the price of these?
No, I don't know. Because I never really, when the announcement came, I was like, it's interesting, but I didn't take it seriously.
Yeah, I'm frantically wandering around the Amazon website now. I don't want to put it up on the screen sharing because it's got my postcode on it. Because I'm signed.
£269 in the UK.
Well, it's not insane, but it's not cheap either.
Will they be discounted on Black Friday?
Almost certainly. Amazon are quite good at doing that, aren't they?
Yeah. So it looks cool. I'd love to have a play with one. If it was about £100 cheap, I'd probably have a punt.
Interesting. Shall I tell you a little bit about Apple's motion thing and car sickness?
Yeah, which is a feature I seem to have completely forgotten about.
Yeah, so did I. I remember when it dropped in iOS 18, I think, beta, I looked and saw that I had checked inside of the app automatic. So it's meant to sense when you're in a vehicle and turn this on. And I'd been a passenger a couple of times and never thought to check anyway. No, I had checked, but it didn't make any difference, so I just thought it was broken or not available yet. Anyway, I happened to be a passenger for a longer period of time on Friday. I went into the settings because I had nothing better to do in the car. The weather was awful. I don't really get motion sick in vehicles, so this is something I was just curious to see what it looked like as much as anything else.
Then you are very lucky. I'm just going to leave that there.
I went into the app. It was set to automatic and motion. I turned it on. It put a bunch of dots on the screen. They move very gradually as the vehicle's accelerating. You can sort of see them move down the screen a little bit. When you turn, they sort of move across a little bit, and they sort of maintain aspect with the vehicle, giving you the motion of the car is represented physically on the screen. So if you brake heavily, the dots will move more quickly up the screen. If you turn hard, the dots will move in the direction of travel. So I guess if you were motion sick, it may be adding that what you're seeing on the screen is matching what your inner ear is experiencing as sort of with the motion of the vehicle that you're in. Having turned it on, I then didn't switch off again. And they don't show up in the screenshots either. I was curious to see if you took a screenshot with them on so I could pass them on to you when we were talking about it. They didn't show up in that. So it's entirely like an overlay over the front of the screen when they're on. Now, however, they're just on. So I put it back onto automatic and didn't think about it, expecting it to disappear again. But when I put the car on its MagSafe charger and put the map on to drive back today, they were there. As I was driving the vehicle as the driver on the map, on my Apple Maps coming back. So I seem to have triggered them forever now. I mean, I can go in and turn them off. I don't know that I need them. But it is interesting. It took me to physically turn it on, be a passenger, and flip them back to automatic for it to work.
Yeah, it feels like there's a bug there. It feels a bit odd. I do get travel sick. I'm never very good with motion. So I normally drive. If there's driving to be done, I'm quite comfortable to drive. So I would probably do that. But I'm curious to try this out if I am a passenger like you. Does it work on trains and things? Because I don't get motion sick on a train, but some people I know don't enjoy that experience, or on boats and things. So it'd be interesting to know if it does multiple forms of transport.
I don't see why it wouldn't. And I'd say when you're on the train tomorrow, turn it on and have a go.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, you got nothing to lose. And then if you don't like it, switch it off or just put it back on automatic and see what happens. I suspect it's probably already on automatic for you, but check it out.
I don't know. But by the way, just looking at buying a Coloursoft, as you do, if you click on trade-in, it lists all the Kindles it knows that you've got and tells you how much the trading value is. That's quite cool.
Oh, I did not know that.
£85 for a Kindle Scribe. I reckon I could probably sell that and get more on eBay.
I think you probably could. App of the week?
Go for it.
So my app of the week is very niche. If you're an academic or a PhD student or an undergrad even, and you want to keep track of your referencing, which if you've ever done a degree or done anything like this, it's really important to keep track of your referencing, because if you go back 6 weeks later and think, where did I get that from? You could be in trouble trying to find your references. Anyway, Zotero is an open source reference tracking app. It installs a little plugin into your Firefox or your Safari or whatever you need. So when you're actually looking at an academic journal, you can click up in the top of your browser. It will save it to your Zotero library, either under a folder that you want to give it or just within the app in general. Zotero itself gives you a free amount of sync space, but if you don't trust them to sync all your referencing, you can store it as text files on your computer as well. If it's an open text journal, it will embed the PDF of the actual article as well, so you can go back and find it. But then the killer part of this is, if you're using Word or another writing program, it will automatically maintain your referencing for you as well. So you click a button in Word, add a Zotero reference, and it will keep that up to date and current within the text. So if you go back up further in the text and add another reference above that one, it will renumber them. And the other killer feature is that if there's a particular referencing style, so my daughters, for example, use Harvard referencing style, but a Cardiff modification of it, is you can modify the CSL files, because they're just text files, to say, okay, they want author's first initial before surname, and you can do that yourself, or the chances are somebody else has downloaded a CSL file. So for me, when I was publishing a last thing in BMJ Open, I found the BMJ referencing standard, I did BMJ Open, put it in there, and it sorted out my references for me and keeps it up to date across multiple versions of the document. It's open source, it's well supported. There are closed source versions like EndNotes and things like that available too, but I just think it's a terrific little app. Bit niche, you probably have no need for it, but it's really well done.
Yeah, do you know what though? Looking at the screenshots, and I just clicked through to the App Store, it looks a great app. Genuinely, looks really nice. Very clean, very crisp. Yeah, it looks very smart. I'm impressed with it, but you are quite correct. It's probably a bit niche for me.
A bit niche for you. Thing of the week.
So I've gone with a really boring thing of the week. So I actually splurged and bought an Aquera Home Hub M3 because I bought the Aquera U200 door lock. I put it on my shed, but I couldn't use my phone, with the home key, where you can have a card in your wallet and open the door and do all the Apple Home integrations. So I had a bit of a splurge. I bought one of these, and I also bought another lock to fit on my front door. And whilst this M3 hub I got it for £100. It's normally 130. It was a lot of money. But you know what? I can now walk into my front door and just hold my phone up to the keypad. Don't even need to look at my phone because you can do it in the express mode, and my front door unlocks. I can go to my front door, close it, and then I can push a button in my phone to lock the front door again if that's what I want to do. It's fantastic. The M3 hub is a massive quality of life improvement. Same when I come down to my office, I can run the scene to open all my blinds and it will unlock the front door. Or again, I can just hold my phone up to the keypad to open the door. And when you leave, you can just push the lock button on the keypad if you want. What a quality of life. So that, coupled with the Aquera hub, Roger was sharing your postcode, I think.
I'm not.
Okay.
I've put in another postcode.
Just checking. So it's a great device, and would recommend anybody that wants to remove keys. So I now do not need to take a key when I leave the house. Big tick for me, because I've been trying to get rid of my wallet for a long time, and the fact it works in express mode is really good. Just a great bit of kit, quality of life. And you know what? I've got it set up for all my family. They all use Home anyway because we have cameras on our doorbell and what have you. But they now know how to unlock and open the door, and it was very simple just to show them how to use it. So I just think it's great. And like if you've got kids that are just starting to go to school and walk home on their own and need to let themselves in, it's another thing. They don't need a key. They can just let themselves in. Very simple to do. And you can check as well if they need to lock up. You can check they've locked the door. You can get notifications as well, say who's unlocked it, who's locked it. And if you've got other people need to gain access, maybe your family or friends, you can give them a PIN code and they can just type that in, or you can invite them into your home as a guest pass. But the one bit I wasn't keen on is if somebody's already set up with the Home app, you have to invite them into your whole home. You might not want them seeing your cameras and your lights and your heating, but you just want them to be able to gain access to your door from time to time because they're coming over. And that's the only bit I think it's not as mature as it could be. So for those people, I'm just giving them a PIN code to let themselves in. But what a great bit of kit. Like I said, I've got rid of my wallet now. Very happy. But it's a shame they don't bundle this hub with one of the door locks, because you might as well get it together and give me a bundle discount or something.
I don't know that I trust the locks yet. After the whole sort of Yale thing about them potentially leaving your house unlocked and all the rest of it. So I'm glad you're living this life for us, Chris, and you can take one for the team if it goes wrong.
All this lock does is turn the key in the back of the door. So it's nothing really clever. It's a mechanical box on the inside that literally just turns the key. So it's not doing anything weird and wonderful. But I think the way they've done it is actually pretty cool. I love it.
Fair enough. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think it's a show. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, you can contact Rod on Mastodon at g5maniac@mastodon.scot, or I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch it on YouTube by going to wakefromsleep.com and clicking on the YouTube link, or drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.